Well, that place was a ripoff.
There is nothing quite like it. A misfit film with a misfit cast by a misfit director, filmed in Idaho, of all places.
I don't know how they do things down in Juarez, but here in Idaho we have a little something called pride.
Everything about it is unconventional and out of place. It's awkward, straight up dorky. Parts of it don't really seem to make sense. And yet, 20 years later, it remains a beloved cult classic. Here is everything you need to know about the film Napoleon Dynamite. AT&T recently mentioned that 73 million personal records of current and former customers were released and found in places all over the dark web. It made me want to do something to help beef up my personal security. Fortunately, there's a solution to this problem. Enter Aura, this video's sponsor, which can identify data brokers exposing your information and submit opt-out requests on your behalf. Brokers legally have to remove your info if you ask them to, but they make it super difficult to do. Let Aura handle it for you. Aura also does so much more to protect you and your family from online threats you can't see. It's easy to set up. You get parental controls, antivirus, VPN, password management, identity theft insurance, and more, all in one app, all at one affordable price. So let Aura do the hard work of keeping you safe online. Go to aura.com/beatgoeson to start your 14-day free trial. The link's also in the description. Thanks to Aura for sponsoring this video. Brigham Young University, or BYU, 2002. Film students Jared Hess and John Heater decide to collaborate on a class project. What resulted was a short film called Palooka, which follows a dorky high school student named Seth, played by Heater. Hess and Heater submitted the film to the Slam Dance Film Festival, where people loved it. One person in particular who loved it was Hess's friend, Jeremy Kuhn, who also attended BYU. He convinced Hess to drop out of college to turn Palooka into a full-length feature film after finding investors to help him pay for its production. Jared wrote a screenplay for the film with his wife, Jerusha Hess, who also was a film student at BYU. Jared later said that much of the script was autobiographical, loosely based on all the awkward experiences he and his 5 brothers went through growing up as Mormons. Kuhn and Hess had a difficult time finding investors for the film. Hess later said that many thought it was, quote, too weird, or they just didn't like the character. Speaking of that character, Heater practically volunteered to play the role of Napoleon, basically a more complex version of Seth from Palooka. Napoleon's last name, Dynamite, of course. Efren Ramirez, who had extremely minor roles in a handful of other films up to that point, played Napoleon's friend, Pedro. Tina Margarino, who had been a successful child actor, but had taken time off from acting and was considering not coming back to it, played Napoleon's friend, Deb. 3 of the more accomplished and recognized actors were John Grise, Sandy Martin, and Diedrich Bader. Grise played Uncle Rico. Martin played Napoleon's grandma, and Diedrich played Rex, a local martial arts instructor. Grise later said that he likely would have quit acting if not for being offered to play the role of Uncle Rico. Diedrich later said that the script for what would become known as Napoleon Dynamite was, quote, one of the 2 top scripts I've ever read. The other one being the one for Office Space, which he also starred in, of course, and I also have a video about that movie. Jared would direct, Kuhn would produce, joined by Chris Wyatt and Sean Covell. Long story short, Hess and Kuhn scrounged up enough money to attempt to film everything in just 23 days in July 2003. It was often hot during filming, very hot. Hess decided to film it in his hometown of Preston, Idaho, about 2.5 hours north of BYU. One of the main filming locations was Preston High School, where Hess actually graduated from back in 1997. They also filmed in Hess's old neighborhood and the chicken farm where his brothers used to work. Since they didn't have much money, the Hesses bought nearly all of the actors' wardrobe at thrift stores. Hess cast many of his friends from school, including Aaron Ruel, who played Kip, Napoleon's older brother. Ruel had never acted in a movie before, and has barely acted in any movies since, I should say. Hess's actual real-life neighbor, Dale Critchlow, volunteered to play the role of Lyle. Many of the students in the movie were actual students at Preston High School. Local Preston residents were incredibly generous to the film crew, providing housing and regularly providing them with food. Oh, and there were few stunt performers.
Watch this.
What the heck are you doing?
That's what I'm talking about.
Yes, Grise really threw that.
He's like, hey man, listen, I can hit him. I was a minor league baseball player. So John Grice, with this chunk of steak, full tilt, knee up, pitcher on the mound, lean into it, wham! Smokes John, cuts him. His glasses cut him. So we had to patch him up. Unfortunately, we were going into a weekend, so he had time to heal up before we put him back through makeup.
The Hesses wrote Napoleon's big dance scene literally because they knew Heater liked to dance. And oh boy, could he dance. They approached Heater and told him that his ability to dance would either make or break the film. No pressure. Getting the rights to the song Napoleon danced to, Jamiroquai's Canned Heat, was about half the movie's budget. You mainly see outdated technology and fashion in the movie, however, because that's how Hess viewed his Idaho hometown. It was always at least 10 years behind the times. After filming, editing mostly took place in the fall of 2003. If it weren't for the Sundance Film Festival, we likely all wouldn't know about Napoleon Dynamite. The movie debuted there on January 17th, 2004. The folks at Fox Searchlight Pictures were impressed, especially Nancy Utley. Utley became determined to release the movie and promoted the heck out of it. With the help of Paramount and MTV Films, Napoleon Dynamite debuted in theaters across the country on June 11th, 2004. It slowly became a commercial success. That said, the film had a somewhat polarizing reception. You either loved it or just didn't get it. Famous movie reviewer dude Roger Ebert gave the movie just 1.5 stars, writing, quote, "There is a kind of studied stupidity that sometimes passes as humor, and Jared Hess's Napoleon Dynamite pushes it as far as it can go." The polarizing effect of this film has also made it difficult for streaming platforms like Netflix to know who to suggest it to based on algorithms. Napoleon Dynamite indeed takes place in Preston, Idaho. As I mentioned earlier, judging by the fashion, technology, and much of the pop culture featured in the film, it feels like the story is set in the early 1990s. However, the film's opening credits reveal that it clearly takes place in 2004, or the year of the film's release. While you should definitely watch it yourself, here is the basic storyline. Napoleon Dynamite is a lonely, dorky 16-year-old who goes to high school in, Preston. He lives with his grandmother and even dorkier older brother, Kip. In many ways, Napoleon endures many of the same struggles many teenagers go through in high schools around the world. It's clear that he has trouble fitting in, but also demonstrates a surprisingly mature confidence in himself, though he often hides that confidence around bullies. And yes, he is often bullied. After Napoleon's grandma is injured in an ATV accident, she asks Napoleon and Kip's uncle Rico to look after them, even though they, it doesn't seem like, it seems like they're just too old to be babysat. But whatever. In many ways, Uncle Rico is just as immature as Napoleon and Kip. He's delusional and naive. He falls for fake time machines and get-rich-quick schemes.
Did that guy in Florida give you your money back yet?
Oh, I wrote him an email saying I'm gonna contact the authorities if I don't get a refund in full.
He lives in a van. While Kip gets along with Uncle Rico, Napoleon certainly does not. However, he does get friends at school, which is a big freaking development. First, Pedro, who transfers to Napoleon's school from Mexico, and Deb, who Napoleon first meets as she's trying to sell him stuff at his front door, but also goes to his school.
I see you're drinking 1%. Is that because you think you're fat? Because you're not. You could be drinking whole if you wanted to.
A big plot development is when Pedro decides to run for class president, and his main opponent is the popular Summer Wheatley, played by Haley Duff, Hilary Duff's sister. Meanwhile, Kip's girlfriend that he met online, LaFonda, played by Chandrella Avery, arrives in town from Detroit, and soon Kip realizes he needs to make big life changes. The climax of the movie arrives as Summer and Pedro present skits to the entire school to persuade them to elect them as class president, with Napoleon, quite unexpectedly, coming to the rescue. Even if Napoleon Dynamite's plot is not groundbreaking, the film's aesthetics and unabashed awkwardness certainly was. And the brilliance of Napoleon Dynamite comes not from its plot, it comes from its characters and its script. There are so many memorable one-liners in this movie.
If you vote for me, all of your wildest dreams will come true.
Nearly every single line of Napoleon Dynamite is unexpected the first time you hear it, but quotable afterward.
Stay home and eat all the freaking chips, Kip.
Napoleon, don't be jealous that I've been chatting online with babes all day. Besides, we both know I'm training to become a cage fighter.
That said, many quotes from the film have become so iconic at this point that odds are you've already heard at least some of them before watching it for the first time. There are so many memorable characters in this movie. Characters that are not just typically seen in movies. One of the characters is Preston, Idaho itself. By capturing this small Idaho town so well, the film also captures Middle America so well. A strange term for the American heartland that I guess is here? Also, not typically seen in movies. Several critics have claimed that the characters in Napoleon Dynamite are over the top, but I'd argue you could find characters like these in every single small town in America. In fact, it's rare to find such authentic characters in a movie. Many critics have also complained that Napoleon Dynamite doesn't have much of a plot. And I used to also believe this, but that's not true at all, man. It has a plot. It has a classic underdog story. The misfit finds new friends, gains confidence, and overcomes his fears and awkwardness, and ultimately shines to help his friend, all while finding out his true identity along the way. Heck, the same can be said about most of the main characters of this film. Even though Napoleon Dynamite had a budget of just $400,000, it has since made approaching $50 million at the box office and more than $130 million in home video sales, not to mention all the merchandise sales. Heck, John Heder reportedly only got $1,000 for his role, which means that most of the rest of the cast likely got squat for their performances. The movie arguably led to a sharp rise in major film companies investing in indie flicks, particularly those set in Middle America, and particularly those that did well at Sundance. It also led to a phenomenon known as the Napoleon Dynamite effect, a term that has even appeared in academic journals. It describes anything that adds a lot of uncertainty to a model. Indeed, it was a risky film, being so unconventional and all. Today, we simply don't see Hollywood take risks anymore on films like this. But hey, I get why. In 2012, Fox Broadcasting Company thought it wasn't taking a risk when it released a TV show based on the movie, but that show completely flopped. Fox canceled it just after 6 episodes. Regardless, the film has continued to resonate with younger generations. Each year, its popularity continues to rise. At first glance, it doesn't make much sense why Napoleon Dynamite has done so well. Its sense of humor is kind of weird. The plot is kind of basic. It is the opposite of glamorous. Every moment is painfully awkward. It's a film without any major Hollywood stars. When you go to the Wikipedia pages of all the actors in this film, for pretty much every single one, it says something along the lines of best known for their role in Napoleon Dynamite. That's because before and after the movie's release, these actors were not famous. In fact, many before and after the movie's release haven't acted much at all. That's kind of crazy when you really think about it. But yeah, anyway, every person tied to this film, even the film's primary creator, Jared Hess, will forever be strongly associated with Napoleon Dynamite. But they should all be proud of that, man, because it's a masterpiece. Napoleon Dynamite is a Hollywood film unlike any other Hollywood film in history. No offense to the outsiders, but Napoleon Dynamite features the real outsiders. It takes a bunch of characters that don't fit in and are often in the background and makes them the stars. These characters are not charismatic. I mean, they're boring, and some argue are not easy to relate to. They are straight up weird, man. We just don't often get characters like this, especially in a Hollywood film. I mean, if we're lucky, we might get to watch characters like this on YouTube. But again, not in freaking Hollywood. Napoleon Dynamite was a blockbuster Hollywood film that was the opposite of a blockbuster Hollywood film. It wasn't supposed to be a success, folks, but the fact that it was so successful is proof that not only is Hollywood so out of touch, but that we crave so much more out of films than spectacle. But I argue that despite their quirkiness, these are characters we can relate to. Why? Because our lives are awkward. Most of us don't have charisma. Most of us have a hard time fitting in. Most of our lives are weird, man. We don't always crave fantasy in films. We often just crave reality. And it's weird that Hollywood often doesn't realize that. So hey, June 11th marks the 20th anniversary of when this film first hit theaters across the United States. And I gotta say, 20 years later, it holds up remarkably well. It's definitely one of my favorite 10 films of all time. So, which movie should I cover for this series next? Let me know down below, and thanks for watching.